The story I want to share with you is where I was the problem dungeon master and my partner, friend at the time, was a player. I'll refer to them as Barbarian throughout. I started a homebrew solo campaign which was played over Discord since we were attending separate universities at the time. It started out fine. I established the world in the previous campaign and Barbarian created a character that suited said world. No problem so far. Cracks started to form though when I would interrupt sessions midway through. We'd be right in the middle of a session where roleplay was more of a focus and then I would just run off to see what my roommates were doing. Often, this would lead to me completely abandoning the session. Bro goes out to the club in the middle of D&D games?
Sir, I cannot hope to repay the debt that I owe you. You've saved my family. I was happy to return your daughter to you, and I am glad that you feel so... Of course... hello? Sir? Sir, are you there? Hello? What's going on? What's that music? DM? Well, what's happening? DM? It's getting kind of loud!
Games would be left abandoned in favor of hanging out with my friends or going out drinking. Obviously, this was bad, but these were scheduled in advance, so it isn't like I had no control over the timing of the sessions too. As you can imagine, this was devastating to Barbarian, as their character was extremely important to them, and we were both using D&D at the time to explore our own identities, so stopping mid-roleplay, well, it caused problems. This brings me to my next point. Barbarian was engaging in a romance with a male NPC that I had made. Romance had been allowed in previous sessions, so it wasn't like this was off the table, but I had internalized homophobia and transphobia at the time. Bro, how did this relationship survive? So, we were playing one night, we got into an argument where I spitefully said, "I only made a gay NPC for you. I know how you like your gay men." This was horrible. But we carried on the campaign another day eventually, though, because of our argument. I didn't want Barbarian romancing this NPC anymore, and to force this to stop happening, I decided to kill them off in the most stupid, unrealistic way possible. We did end up finishing that campaign, but it was a rough time. Luckily, I improved, both as a person and a dungeon master. We still play D&D to this day, and I'm happy to say it's full of happy queer relationships. This is just a reminder to people that you can and should review any bias. I mean, you could also annihilate those biases with a machine gun, but you know, to each their own. And also, don't abandon sessions, even if you only have one player. Man, I'm really glad this person took our core message to heart. You can always choose to be better, but dang, your partner held out, to say the least. The story begins where most stories, good or bad, do. Browsing LFG posts. My site of choice at the time was Roll20 because beggars could not be choosers with how hard it is to find a game as a player. One of the offers was described fairly simply, labeling itself as a Monster Hunter campaign, not the game series, with fairly minimal description otherwise for the most part. I've seen better, I've seen worse though. Like I said, beggars can't be choosers, so I put my application in, including an example character as you do, and actually got a request back pretty quickly. Hell, probably wasn't longer than 15 minutes tops. I got invited to a Discord, got myself introduced to the Dungeon Master properly, and the other players, and we actually got into character building quite fast, even if I was already raising a little bit of eyebrow at how the DM jumped right into using the example character and not fully going over any options, but I'd look past that. DM wanted to immediately hop into voice chat to plan things out that way, which I get. It leads to a more natural flow of bouncing ideas, you know, stuff like that. I actually heavily agree with this. I always prefer doing character creation when I'm talking to the other person. Hearing their enthusiasm, seeing their enthusiasm, it's a wondrous thing. I'm curious, how do you guys do it? You know, stuff like that. Especially since the character I planned on playing would require a bit of homebrew in the race department. I sat into the character backstory as we started the mechanical side of things, and I'd say this planted the first seed for things to come. Now, for a bit of context, I tend to write somewhat long backstories, not full-on novels, but it's definitely going to be a couple pages. The way I said them was 3 pages, 12-point font, double space, Times New Roman, the works. So, one of my shorter ones, but still longer than some papers I turned in during high school. Her character sheet was done pretty fast, just because I was very, very familiar with Roll20 and character creation, even though finagling with details to make her a mer kobold. Okay, alright, that's the new one.
You don't take candle.
Originally, she was made with an elf and an orc had a little baby, the unofficial one from that Ginny D video. I would recommend that, but I wasn't going to spring that on the DM because I wasn't more familiar with it at the time. We're doing this whole thing just because they really wanted to use that example character from the application. Now, others were in the voice chat, also getting their stuff together, and I didn't think much of it, but as I went to leave the call, the Dungeon Master told me the session was starting in 15 minutes. This took me back hard. The LFG post wasn't advertised in such a way, at the risk of sounding kind of rude. It didn't advertise much of anything about itself at all. It also immediately put a bad taste in my mouth because, like I said, I try to put some effort into my character backstories so they have proper meat on their bones, like potential for arcs and character development, meaningful plot hooks, etc. The time between me sending the DM the full backstory when the session was going to start wouldn't be enough time for me as a Dungeon Master to even properly digest what the character was about, let alone do my due diligence to guarantee they probably get worked into the story and everything. Not to mention, do you have 3 hours to play the game?
And that is why Duncan is so desperate to get back to his family. So what now? Well, obviously, now that we're done with character creation, we're just gonna get started on session 1. We're starting now, dude. I mean, I don't just have 3 hours to... it won't even be that long. Are you even prepped? Prep, schmep, it'll be great. I'm using a module anyway. I mean, I don't have the book, but like, it'll be fine. I think this is a bad idea. Look, if you don't play this game, I will make sure you are blacklisted from every LFG post. Okay, alright, can you give me a sec? Thank you. Hey, Mom. Sorry, I can't go to Grandma's funeral. It's not my fault!
I also get that some games are more impersonal, for lack of a better term, in regards to character and their backstory, hence why I use one of my weaker characters as an example, but like I said, the LFG had zero indication it would be like that. Alas, I gritted my teeth with a smile and decided to continue on. Maybe they could do all that later. Right. Come time for the session, it's about to begin, like probably no more than an hour after I'd been invited to the server in the first place. Nothing was really done to alleviate my worries. I actively had to ask the Dungeon Master if we were doing a proper session 0, hoping maybe they'd postpone the session a week and just dedicate this one to getting our characters worked out fully. Well, we had session 0, if you include a 3-minute back and forth on the bare minimum of things that you would include in a proper session 0. Bro moves through session 0 faster than the flash. Damn. Jumping into the actual session, my finger was already hovering over the leave call button purely because of everything else, but the beginning of the actual session was the straw that broke the camel's back. The DM just barely had Roll20 working, and like, I get it. I've experimented with Roll20 as a virtual tabletop for my own games, and know it can be a barely usable mess, hence why we advocate Foundry supremacy here at Crispy's Tavern. All VTTs are equal, it's just Foundry is slightly less equal, because it's better. The Dungeon Master was running into issues that could have been solved by just some basic experimentation beforehand to work out the kinks. That and his narration was as bare bones as the LFG post, and I eventually just hit my limit. I lied and said I need to grab something, left the call, and then left the server. Yeah, you told your DM you're grabbing milk, right? A little bit later, the Dungeon Master messaged me in private messages, but I just tried to ignore it. Later on, they said, "They all died, lol." And I didn't doubt it was their encounter balance that was rough around the edges, as kinda like everything else. Last I saw, the LFG was hovering around Roll20 some time ago with 0 players in it, with no more details included, and history probably just was doomed to repeat itself. If I got anything positive out of this, it's just that it was the breaking point that made me raise my expectations for LFGs. I may be desperate to find a game, but I'm not desperate enough to try my luck with posts that don't even list a single detail about the world or plot, because that's often telling. I also feel the need to say, I don't mean to put disrespect on newer DMs dipping their toes into the role. Hell, I was searching because I was coming off DM burnout resulting from 4 straight years of DMing, at minimum 1 campaign non-stop, with more basic campaigns, but there's a tipping point. This applies double to LFGs, where including a decent chunk of information is really important for players to know what you're offering. Dungeon Masters who cannot even be bothered to just write a couple sentences to explain what's going on, yeah, they can't be bothered to run a good game either. Frankly, the kind of things I'd include in LFG are also the kind of things I would make anyway just for my D&D game. Like, for example, basic world building stuff, I'm probably writing that down anyhow. Conveying my DMing style would take me literally 2 minutes. I mean, it is not that much effort to write a half-decent Roll20 or whatever post for any kind of LFG. DMing, though, that is a time investment in general. Like, you do need to put time into being a dungeon master. And again, if you can't even put time into writing a good post to attract players, that's on you. And a good sign that your game is probably not going to be that good. Look, I feel for this DM clearly that you're just trying it out, experimenting. But if you want your little experiment to work, if you want your game to be good, you gotta put the bare minimum of backbone into it. Otherwise, you're gonna end up like this DM. 0 players. Hello, it's me again, back at it with another horror story. So I had run a game where the players were prisoners, sent into the Shadowfell to be banished. The characters were supposed to be deeply flawed people who may or may not change their ways, and may or may not be good or evil. The idea being that, like with any system, false convictions happen, and you may be a good person. One thing I told my players in Session 0 and 0.5 is that combat in this campaign is a tool to be used carefully and cautiously. Most encounters were built with many ways to avoid it, and taking it on is always an option, albeit often the wrong option. So unless they're very confident or they have a plan, they shouldn't engage in combat with the creatures of this dimension. Things started off with a tiny red flag during the character creation process. She was playing a monk who was flawless when the campaign required you have at least one major flaw. Aren't they, like, listed in the book?
Nah, who needs them?
Having flaws gave you greater rewards for role-playing them in my game. She built her character to be ultra noble though, all about the greater good and doing the right thing and just generally being heroic. I allowed it because I thought that whether by choice or accident, that was actually an amazing flaw for her character. She didn't list it as a flaw, but left the flaw area just empty. Fast forward a few sessions in, and the players are on a quest to find a shadow hag hut in the corrupted forest and uncover an amulet that can be used to protect against the Shadowfell-like conditions of the dimension. When they get there and find that hag, it's busy offering people for sacrifices in a ritual. It gave the players a chance to speak, caused some distraction inside the hut to occupy the hag, and steal the amulet. Sounds great. The Mission Impossible theme is playing as they narrowly manage to grab the artifact. This is when the player decided she is going back for the hostages. I love this and gave her inspiration for role-playing her flaw. The other players argued a bit in character, but ultimately told her they would help from a distance, as at this point, they were out of spells and tools to do stealth things again. She agreed and said not to worry, she has a plan. Her plan? She walked out in the open and challenged the Shadow Hag. Ah yes, the Kratos way. I have a plan to take down this gargantuan beast. The plan is kill the thing! To be fair though, it usually works out for Kratos. Got a feeling it's not going to work out for this lady. I asked her if she was sure. Once as a narrator, you consider it to be dangerous. Are you sure? And another as the game master. Just to be clear, Shadow Hags are extremely dangerous, CR13 creatures. Are you sure you wish to challenge it in its lair? Both were met by confirmation by the player. So they challenged the Shadow Hag. She got Finger of Death cast on her and she died instantly. The player went silent while I described her death and went to do my normal player character died, what's next, talk to the player. But they broke down and started insulting me, calling me sexist for her character dying? Apparently, I didn't want to see women succeed in the game because why would the hags have such a powerful spell? Wait, isn't the hag a woman? A woman succeeded. She succeeded in killing your ass! She also said that I want to humiliate her because I narrated how her character dies and turns into a zombie. I explained that neither were true, other women in the game were not dead, and my feminine presenting NPCs often hold positions of power, like the hag that she just got killed by. I also had no intention to humiliate her. I described her death very briefly and reminded her that we have a safety card system that she could use if she wanted to make me stop and skip anything uncomfortable at the time. In the end, she wouldn't listen to me. She ended up leaving, which I was disappointed with, and I apologized to her for it not working out. I asked for feedback, and I just thought that that would be that. But it wasn't. She harassed the two women still in my group, and when they mentioned that she was crossing the line, she called them awful names and leaped over the line by saying to the trans woman that she would have been mad about it if she was a real woman. Hey guys, we found one. It's a femcell in the wild. Woo! Safe to say, I did not expect things to turn out this way. She was promptly added to my ban list of people that I never want to play with again. Oh, and for those who are interested, the campaign had combat in it. I just showed them that combat often has to be very carefully planned and cautious. I'm fully aware that a monk or fighter will feel like they don't belong otherwise. Prior to this, their first combat encounter was about finding hidden passages that allowed them to get ambushed from height on a patrol, instantly invalidating about half of the enemies who only had melee attacks and had no way to climb back up. Combat still happened, and did so with decent frequency. It's just that I consider finding ways to make the combat much easier to be avoiding it. And when I mentioned in the post, taking it on, I meant like just saying screw it and jumping in with no prep. The latter of which I mentioned multiple times to be a completely bad idea, often resulting in a player character death or a total party kill. I told them there would always be ways to avoid the combat encounter or make it easier on yourself. I really felt bad because a bunch of people were giving this Dungeon Master crap for their style of running the game, and frankly, if their style is working out for most of their players, they're doing a good job. Of course, our dear player's complaint is ridiculous. The Dungeon Master warned her multiple times what would happen if she took on that hag, and she got upset when the result was exactly what the DM warned her would happen. I think some people really don't internalize that actions have consequences in this game, that sometimes the DM isn't going to pull their punches, especially when they're giving you an active warning. We've seen plenty of sexism in general on D&D horror stories. Happens all the time, unfortunately, but this ain't an example of that. Using that language in a way to just get what you want is not ideal, especially if you're going to turn around and be transphobic 5 seconds later. I mean, come on. This lady, she just has no class. First time writing a horror story out, and English is not my first language, so bear with me here. This happened about 3-ish months ago, and I have a horrible memory. I'm piecing this from my messages to my friends, so sorry for any possible plot holes. Our cast, with fake names obviously, myself as the Tiefling Moon Druid, the Dungeon Master, the DM, aka The Problem, Star is an Elven Hexblade, Ian is an Orcish Barbarian, and this isn't the entire party, but these are the only people who are relevant to the story. I've been the forever Dungeon Master for my friend group for the past few months now, and since my first job started paying enough that I could quit my second job, congratulations by the way, I decided it would be a great idea to also join another group as a player. Since none of my friends weren't part of any other D&D campaigns besides my own, I decided to look for a game over at r/LFG. You know what? I think it deserves this. r/LFG. Yeah, it fits. I applied to some games which fit my schedule, and the concept seemed cool enough to keep my ADHD brain interested. One of the posts was for a homebrew campaign ran by a seasoned Dungeon Master with over 10 years of experience, which advertised a lot of political intrigue. I don't remember much detail from it besides being essentially a topple either one of the two major factions or plunge them into mutual destruction via war, you know, that kind of campaign. The listing asked to leave Discord usernames in the comments so the DM can reach out to potential players. I did so, and within like 3 hours, I got a friend request from them. I accept, expecting to get on a call with the DM and get screened. Instead, I get sent a Discord server invite. This should have been my first red flag, but I ignored it, thinking that maybe the call would come later and the DM is still like gathering the party. I checked the server channels to see messages from a lot of users who left the server where a lot of channels that were referenced, they didn't even exist. The Dungeon Master explained that those people were the first people he ran the campaign with, and the channel which were being referred to in messages were deleted because he didn't need them anymore. A little weird you didn't make a new server for this game, but okay, I guess. Until the DM invited 8 people to the server, which included Ian, and asked to start rolling characters on Foundry, which provided a really sketchy link while saying that he was using a free hosting service because he was out of cash. As a Foundry fanatic, I have no idea what he's talking about. Forge is a paid service, a great one by the way, that I use to host my Foundry games. You can also host your Foundry games on your own computer, but I wouldn't consider that an external service. Does anyone know what the DM's talking about? Anyway, I whipped out my good old NordVPN, not sponsored, just in case this crap site gives the DM access to our general location. The DM would get hyped in chat about how this campaign was 3 years in the making, and that he's finally ready to show it off to more people. But when asked for basic lore, what are the factions? What gods are worshipped? Are there any limits on what we can play as, etc.? We wouldn't really hear from them.
I have been crafting, perfecting my perfect homebrew world for years, and now it's finally ready for you all to experience it in all its glory. Are you prepared? Yeah, you've been telling us how great it is for like a few hours now, but I mean, anyway, in terms of actual content, can you tell me what it's called? Well, I'll put the name in my notes. Let me check my notes. You don't just know the name of your own world off the top of your head? Dude, are you randomly generating it? No, it's just, I want to get a better name. Oh, I mean, come on, man, this is just ridiculous. Its name is Azeroth. Azeroth? Yes, really? What's that? Blizzard legal team! Oh, that would be the Blizzard lawyers. Look at what you have wrought.
They scheduled session 0 and asked that we keep any questions not relating to lore until then. At this point, 2 people leave the game and within the day get replaced by Star and another person. I guess other people were a little weirded out by the Dungeon Master because no one was really talking in the server outside of just coordinating who played what and trying to figure out who was experienced with 5e so we could all help each other if needed. And honestly, with a brand new group, that's not entirely weird. You need to meet each other before you get really deep in a text conversation, especially with socially isolated nerds. The day of session 0 rolls around, and an hour before, the DM lets us know that it was his birthday today. But he's in a foul mood because he dropped contact with one of his parents and asked us to be patient with him. Cancel the game.
I hate you, Mother. I will destroy you. Our whole family is dead to me now. There will be nothing left after my vengeance is complete. Oh, hey, don't worry, man. We're starting D&D in a couple minutes. Yep, we'll be right. Don't worry.
At this point, everything about the DM had enough time to simmer in my head, and I started to think about leaving, but decided to wait until the end of the session to see just where things go. Right from the start, Star, Ian, and I have a lot of questions about the campaign itself, safety tools and triggers, topics which the campaign will be touching on, etc. For many of the questions, the DM either gave us vague answers or said we didn't need to know as it would ruin the twist of the campaign while cutting everyone off and making the excuse of, I'm just autistic, so you need to bear with me. For anything that sounded iffy, which many of us voiced, my red flag radar is off the charts based on the responses, and I'm even more tempted to leave now, but for some stupid reason, I stick around. Luckily for me, there was another campaign that was happy to take me in that seemed much better than this hot dumpster fire. The Dungeon Master very excitedly asked us about starting off session 1, and we all very reluctantly agreed to it. The DM drops us off in the middle of a dungeon with no explanation to tell us to start exploring because starting in a tavern is too cringe. No, it isn't, okay? Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Castlevania. Okay, maybe not that one. He does get kicked in the balls a lot, so that does suck. But seriously, early tavern scenes are cool. We all make very awkward character introductions and go about exploring the dungeon. Our level 1 party opens the first door. We get an encounter of 20 zombies in a small room. We barely get out of it alive as he made several changes to the rules, some of the major ones, like enemies crit if they roll a 17 and above, and crits deal more damage to make it more realistic. Rage no longer halves the damage you receive because that's not how adrenaline works.
Foolish beast! I am a barbarian, and I would like to! Oh, DM! Seriously? I didn't even see what took me out! Was it a pebble? Yeah, a pebble. It dealt like 2d4 damage. You didn't have that much health left at that point. I mean, come on, man. My rage resistance! Your rage resistance? Come on. Have you ever had an adrenaline rush? It doesn't make you invulnerable. That is so ridiculous and unrealistic for a D&D game. Wait. So my natural resistance to damage is unrealistic. But the wizard over there, who's bending space and time and summoning fireballs out of nothing, that's cool? You know, honestly, I don't really see the problem. I mean, I think it's only natural for wizards to get that kind of bonus. I mean, like, you D&D is a mythological...
At this point, Ian, who hasn't even been introduced to us yet, mentions that he needs to leave in about an hour, so asks that we progress a little more quickly. The DM, thankfully, just skips the whole dungeon, which included 3 of the same 20 undead kill boxes, to get us to the end, where we get to the objective of freeing Ian from his shackles. We walk into the room and proceed to do it, when the DM drops the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse on us. Just chilling, level 1, and then suddenly... Star and I make the executive decision of getting out of there once Ian is free, and we flee the battle to the DM's disappointment? Once we get out of combat, Ian proceeds to leave the call, saying that he read the time wrong, and swiftly blocked the DM and the whole party. The DM broke down to tears, and kept saying over and over how people leaving the campaign are ruining his fun, and how he is just going to not schedule any more sessions if any more people leave. He revealed that Ian was going to be a major player in the story, and him blocking the DM threw his plans into the trash. Star and I are exchanging messages at this point, trying to figure out a way to nicely ask the DM to just stop the campaign there. To which Star and I start to mention that we should just pick up where we left off next week so the DM can reevaluate the plan for the campaign. The rest of the party didn't even give the DM a chance, as they took it as an opportunity to make an excuse, and they just left the call. I have no idea what happened with the campaign, because I ended up leaving 2 days after because a family member had a health scare, and they needed my help for a few weeks as they recovered, and both the DM and the party ended up blocking me on Discord. I think, and I wouldn't be surprised if the DM told the party I was lying about this, the other campaign also fell apart due to lack of interest, so I ended up with no additional campaign to entertain myself with. At least I have my own campaign to fill the D20-sized hole in my heart. Ah yes, the plight of the forever DM, enhanced in this case by straight up bad Dungeons & Dragons games. I think it's cool when DMs get really into creating their campaigns, working for years to create an epic world for the players to adventure through, but it doesn't really look like the DM put that much actual effort into the creation of the world, more just the idea of creating the world, which is the bane of every wannabe creative, let's be honest. We like the idea of creating something, but actually creating something, it takes a lot of effort. You need to put backbone into it, and the DM did not do that. Also, God, the lack of preparation for the campaign. I mean, we saw this in the first story too. Look, it's an immediate red flag if the DM is super into starting right away. Look, I'm not saying you need to delay for months or anything, but have a session 0, and a good one, to go over what the heck this campaign is even about. I mean, if you're gonna make Ian a major part of the campaign, you should probably tell Ian that, because he probably didn't even know, because you didn't tell him. Goodness, this DM's just a mess. I don't want another long post from me, so I'm making this as short as possible. Context is, I'm in a real-life Dungeons & Dragons game with 4 friends, the Dungeon Master and the Dungeon Master's girlfriend. We're only level 2 as well, so let's just make some bullet points. First and foremost, the Dungeon Master is late to the session. The Dungeon Master is also very slow to get the story going, just says we're on a wagon heading into the city. 1 IRL hour in, and we're still on the wagon and have done nothing. Just 1 hour of Skyrim intro, hell yeah.
You're finally awake.
Bro, I've been here for an hour. Could we get to the execution, please? Then, 30 minutes of out-of-game talk with no game-related topics. Everyone seems awkward for a minute, but they are understanding towards my frustration. 1 more hour passes, and finally the first battle happens. I get my turn skipped because I rolled low on an athletics check to walk up stairs, even though my character is tied for the fastest movement in the party. Bro, your character's my V from Cyberpunk. I'm dashing through the city. I'm unstoppable. But then, my chucks get caught in a fence or something, and I fall over like a moron. During this battle, random BS happens that causes the party to take unavoidable damage at level 2. The monster takes out more than half of the monk's health, but suffers no injuries itself. The Dungeon Master has an injury rule that will be relevant later, too. Once the monster is dead, the Dungeon Master's girlfriend shows up to play, so he adds her into the game. She's at the gates of the city, tied up by a gnoll who's offering to trade her life for something else. The party just decides to murder the single gnoll to rescue what we know to be the 6th party member. Well, I mean, I got her free first, and I'm rewarded by taking 2 javelins to the chest at range. Not only is my armor class 17, which is less than a 50% chance to hit for a normal level 2 monster, these quote-unquote javelins do 17 damage to me at level 2, just from javelins. Well, how much do... The math is not checking on this one, boys. I finally speak up and say, guys, I drove 45 minutes to be here. Can we just play D&D? The DM just now decides that now a player gets an injury, so I suffer a -1 to Constitution for 17 in-game days. So, thanks. What about the monk? After all that, the Dungeon Master's girlfriend, who I just saved, decides to burn down a schoolhouse because I'm neutral evil. Finally, the Dungeon Master's girlfriend keeps talking about wanting to flirt with other player characters, and I just keep responding with, I'm asexual, all of my characters will be as well. I think I'm leaving the group. You think? This was a 6-hour pain in the butt, and we barely did anything. Okay, I tried talking to one of my friends in that group who is heavily gaslighting me into thinking many of the things I listed above are just normal. They're just normal things. I just told him I'll be dipping out of the campaign. It sounds like my closer friends are gearing up to host at least some one-shots, so I have that in the meantime. But man, I just cannot find a good D&D group. I don't know if it's because I have high standards due to the way that I DM, or I'm literally cursed to never play D&D. I don't know, man. I think you're cursed. We've gotten so many stories from this particular Reddit user, and they're always a pleasure to read. But, yeah, this one in particular was a doozy. First and foremost, we have a DM who seems extremely inexperienced, who doesn't know what they're doing. It kind of reminds me of the first story read in this video with the inexperienced DM, but this guy just seems to really not give a crap about hosting a fun game. Also, side note, and the thing I really hate, unless it's urgent, don't put major new homebrew rules in the middle of sessions. Like, just randomly dropping like, oh, we're doing injury tables now, in the middle of a game is not going to work out for you. The campaign overall just seems overly punishing, and on top of that, having your girlfriend come over and flirt with everyone without them being comfortable with it? Yeah. Creepy and weird. Don't do any of this stuff, man. Hey, that's a wrap. If you want to see more of our videos, you can check out our last episode on a pick-me type girl. It was last Monday, linked in the cards. It's a good one. Lots of juicy drama. If you enjoyed this video, though, then please do leave a like. If you want to be notified on new uploads, you can subscribe to Crispy's Tavern and hit that bell icon. And finally, if you have your own stories or thoughts, you can head down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment, "That's not a plan," to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.
Well, obviously... Oh, wait, I need to take off this shirt. Keep on forgetting to change.